Hello my quilting friends! Today I am quilting Whiplash. This is a really cool design and it starts with this long spiral shape. I'm just spiraling inside and then I'm going to travel stitch all the way back. Travel stitching is the technique where you stitch right on top of your line of quilting. Think of this like making a word bold whenever you're writing a document. You know, you make it bold, it stands out a little bit better. That's what we're going to do throughout this design. And that's also going to take a little bit more time. Notice how slow I'm stitching. I'm being really careful to stay right on top of that line. Okay, so from here I'm going to work my way back around that spiral and I'm going to branch out with these little spiky shapes. I'll work out one way and then work out the other way. For some reason I find whenever I branch out to both directions at once that just doesn't work for my brain, but you know, if you can stitch it and just goes fluidly from one side to the other, that's awesome. Do that. So now I'm going to work my way up. I don't want to put too many spikes on that side of that curly Q shape, just simply because I want to be able to bring them out and around that spiral. Okay, so now I'm stitching out and I want to kind of interlock these spiky shapes with the shapes before it. I don't want them to get too long, but at the same time I want to kind of fill in all of these little gaps in the design. That way it's going to be consistent, it's going to roughly fill the whole square and look the same anywhere you look at it. Now if ever you make a mistake with your travel stitching, like right there the lines were just bouncing a little further apart than I like, just stitch back over it a few times. It's all travel stitched, so you can just always add more thread to it and make it a little bit more dense, a little bit more bold. Okay, so now I'm working my way into the spiral. And notice how I keep these little spikes roughly evenly spaced. You can do that a couple different ways. You could count your stitches, like 3 or 4 stitches, and then you branch out. That's a little complex and fiddly, especially with free motion quilting. You know, your stitch size can fluctuate. So for me personally, I just estimate the space. I can look at it and say, okay, whatever I started with down here at the beginning, I'm roughly keeping that consistent throughout just by eyeballing it. I'm not taking a ruler or a marking pencil to this, although if you need to, do it. It's no big deal. Okay, so how do we move on with this design? How do we keep going with more of our whiplash shapes? And I gotta say, I'm just looking at this going, wow, that is such a cool graphic design. I love that white thread on the black fabric. Okay, so to move on with it, what we're gonna do is just pick one of these whiplash, those spiky shapes, branch out, curve around, and curl into another spiral. And I want you to notice something. I have worked this design in rows. And this is one of those things that I think is really important to start thinking about whenever you're quilting your quilts. So I started here and I stitched down and across, then I came up and stitched across again, and then now I'm coming up and around so I can start that last row. So really, free motion quilting is very logical. You learn how to form that base shape and then you just wash and repeat it. You just repeat that set of steps over and over again. And I like to quilt it over my quilts in rows so I don't get lost in the design, so I don't get stuck in an area. I can fill in all the nooks and crannies as I go and I don't get distracted, kind of stitching in all different directions at once. You might be wondering where to put this design in your quilts. Well, anywhere that you can stitch a nice line of shapes, a cluster of shapes like this. So really pretty much anywhere. You could put this in blocks, you could put this in borders really easily, and sashing really easily. Now the one thing you want to consider whenever you're deciding to use this design is how much time you want to put in your quilt. You can see how slow this is. I have to slow down when I'm travel stitching just a bit. When I'm stitching a single line design, think of stippling, that's another very popular quilting design, then I can speed up quite a bit because I don't have to worry about keeping those lines of quilting right on top of one another. I don't have to worry about all this travel stitching. So just keep that in the back of your head whenever you're deciding to use whiplash on your quilt. If it's an extra special quilt, that you really want to take a little extra time and energy into, put a little bit more thread into it too, then this is going to be a great choice. So here we go, just finishing up, working my way around the spiral, and notice how my lines got a little further apart there. No worries, fill it in, throw more thread at it. That is not against the rules, and anything that's going to make that stand out even better. It's going to make it look more interesting, and that's always a good thing, right? There we go. Just one or two more shapes just to interlock it with the rest. You know, sometimes whenever you're quilting, you might speed up too much. Maybe if I slow down, I'll be able to travel stitch a bit better. There we go. I'm really happy with that. I can't wait to finish this up. Here's a picture of what it looked like when I finished quilting Whiplash. If you'd like to find many, many more inspiring free motion quilting designs, check out my book, 365 Free Motion Quilting Designs. It is the largest book of designs ever published, and you can find it at leahday.com/365. Until next time, let's go quilt.